Yeah, this episode though, I feel like, obviously the first episode has like a ton of excitement around it because we're back. We're back, baby.
Yeah.
That's the theme of episode 1. We had the blood and cheese stuff. A lot of people talked about, the falling out of that. For some people, it was a hit. Some people, it was a miss. But overall, I think everyone agreed that it did what it was supposed to do. And there's no better example of this than the opening of season 2, episode 2 of season 2. I felt all the emotion that I did not feel in episode 1 at the end, which again, I like blood and cheese. I like it better in the books, but I like what we got in the show. It was very well shot, but the emotional fallout of this, I thought they just did a stupendous job. I kind of got a little choked up, man. It was something.
Yeah. Now actually, I want to talk about blood and cheese a little bit because you and I haven't talked about it now that we've seen sort of the whole picture of the way they're going about it. Because you and I both didn't, what we didn't like about it was that they took away the choice because they didn't give him 2 sons in the show. He only has the one, which is a big deal later for some other events that are going to take place. And now I can see how they're going to do that right in the in the thing. So because in the books, actually that kid lives. The one they killed off in the show lives in the books. So now he only has one child. He only has one daughter. That's a big difference in between the book and the show. But now that we've seen episode 2, I just want to bring up I was thinking about all of the things. One, and I talked with Ez about this, and you and I talked a little about this last week, but in the recap, now that we've seen what they've done with blood and cheese by removing that, it makes it even worse on Helena. And because we even see Rhaenyra say to Helena of all people, and by making her be the one to choose, it sort of puts a little bit of blame on her, because if she had to choose now with only the 2 kids and she chooses the boy, that could be a huge blowback on her, being like, well, the boy is the heir, right? And that's the whole because they don't have that other kid. So I see why they sort of did that, because then it could put some of the blame of the situation on her. They're going down the direction of it being Alicent and Kristen Cole's fault, actually even more sort of than Daemon's, although we did get that side over on the Blacks as well. That's going to cause some distrust. So it's just for the paths they need the show to focus on, right? By expanding out the story of the Greens, they needed actually to do it differently. And because they didn't have the second kid, which I guess they could have if they wanted to, but they just didn't go that route. In some ways, I can see how it makes it a little more impactful because she only has 2 little kids as opposed to 3 kids, with one of them being a little bit older.
Right. And blood and cheese is also what we're being told is true, right? Of course, there's that whole thing of what's the objective truth? What's the written down truth? All that stuff. But
there's that
in the book, Alicent is largely vindicated in this scenario. She is just taken, hostage in her own room. Whereas this time, in this rendition of the story that we're seeing on screen, she has a lot of fault here and she knows it. She even says in this episode, "Father, I've sinned," which Otto replies with maybe my favorite line of the show so far is I don't want to know, or whatever he says. He's basically like, keep it to yourself. And I'm like, oh man, I don't know why, but it made me, I was just like, let's go. I do not wish to know, daughter. That's crazy. But there was still a choice here. And I thought about this as we were watching, me and my wife were watching the opening of episode 2. And it's like the question is now in the viewer's mind, or it should be, was Helena picking her boy because she was trying to trick them? Like they initially thought. They said it's the other one. She picked the girl. And he said, wait, no, she's telling the truth. Was she trying to play some 4D chess there? Or did she choose the boy knowing that that's who they would kill? You know what I mean? Was she trying to, we don't know.
Yeah, because her emotions of the scene is really kind of, honestly, it's kind of fast, and in some ways it makes it feel more chaotic. But I think if you actually, now that since I rewatched that scene, I think if you look at the expression of her face, I actually feel like it is a combination of shock, because obviously the whole situation would be you're freaking the hell out because people are here to assassinate, the whole deal is just scary in its own right. But I also feel like she is seeing And this is like something that could be huge because, we talked about this too. Like Helena Targaryen might be one of the most prophetic dreamers ever in a song of
Yeah.
in a song of Ice and Fire. They've really expanded her, which is actually sort of that cool magic element, right? That we sort of, I mean, obviously the show has more dragons than Game of Thrones, so like you have that, but we don't have like the warlocks and the faceless men and the White Walkers and that sort of. Now it's like she is actually going to be that other side of the magic story. But I think it's also the look on her face is I think she's realized like she's seeing one of her visions come true, which isn't the first time it's happened, right? The beast beneath the board. She was there too for that. And it feels like nobody's listening to her. And I sort of have talked about the idea of maybe, I don't want to send us down a different path here, but we can bring this up too, is I kind of think that Helena Targaryen is going to give Aegon II the prophecy of A Song of Ice and Fire, and that's going to be sort of another piece between him and Rhaenyra.
That'd be super interesting because we know it's going to come at some point, right? Like, we're going to have it brought up again, and it's going to play a role in the show without a doubt. We also did talk about last episode that I was on. We talked about how this also gave opportunity for Helena to be a lot more than just a grieving mother locked in Maegor's holdfast, and which is a great thing because I think the actress is extremely talented. And I feel vindicated by saying that because I thought her performance in the second episode was fantastic. So when I watch with my wife, Kelsey, I don't really talk to her about the lore and stuff. Like I watch it just as anyone would watch it because I don't like trouncing people's interpretations. So like I love listening to what she says because she's the general viewer. She hasn't read the books. She watched the main show, and she's just a general, typical person watching the show.
That's my mom for me. My mom like texts me afterwards because she doesn't.
I think
she
it's a
watch
great indicator. I think it's a great indicator. And she looked at me about like 20 minutes in the episode and she said, I feel like this Helena actress is super underrated. Like, who is this lady? Because she's awesome. And I was like, huh. And I just thought that going this way in this episode, it starts to show that Helena can have way more of a role, which I love. And the boy's neck being sewed together and then body almost falling out.
I straight up thought when they hit that puddle, and that's the Game of Thrones factor, right? Like we all have PTSD from Game of Thrones where it's like anything that can go wrong,
I was clinching.
Will go wrong. I straight up thought because they showed the stitches on his neck when they hit that puddle, I was like, I can't. I literally was like, I can't watch. I can't watch if this little kid's head.
There's a little detail in that scene that's crazy. Whenever they show the body from like a horizontal, like you're looking over the body from the side, and the cart's going, his head is jiggling more than his body because it's loose. And I was like, that is such a grim little detail without being gratuitous. I think Condell and the team have done a really great job.
They're crushing it.
Whereas D&D did at times, in my opinion, go a little bit gratuitous with it. I'm not saying that there shouldn't be some, grim stuff. I mean, season 1 of House of the Dragon is pretty grotesque when it comes to like the birthing scenes and stuff. I think it's appropriate and can be very powerful. I'm not someone that shies away from like even shock value. However, I think that, Ryan Condell maybe has a better idea of when to use it than D&D did. So I really appreciate that. And I think this scene, Blood and Cheese, like all of it's kind of reinforcing that. But man, they parade through and, curse on Rhaenyra the Cruel, and the small folk once again kind of featured. And then you have that scene of Aemon in the brothel, and he's being held by what I assume is a prostitute. And she says, when princes lose their temper, it's the small folks that suffer. And then immediately after that, Aegon has the rat catchers hung. And Otto is like, those are brothers and sons and husbands. And of course, Aegon lost his temper. It was an exact, not Aemon, but another prince, now king, obviously, who lost his temper, and the small folk suffered. And they'll remember that. I thought that was a really tiny detail or line of dialogue.
That's been a theme throughout the show. It's a very subtle theme. And